having been the first one myself to be like, hey guys, here's an alternative to how we party usually, they're following along with that.
I've tackled every obstacle. I've done Hindus, weddings, festivals.
Really?
Like, there's nothing I don't think now that I'd be like, oh yeah, I really want to drink at that.
I think people listening to this would be really impressed by that. Gen Z is meant to be the sober generation, so is it just me or is everyone going on a big night out again? Yes, there are more alcohol-free options than ever before, and even pubs like this one that mostly serve alcohol-free drinks. But I read some new research that suggests that binge drinking is making a comeback, and I don't know about you, but loads of my friends are posting about boozy picnics and pre-drinks. So is Gen Z really the sober generation, or is that all a bit of a myth? Well, come with me in here. We're going to speak to 3 young Londoners to find out. Well, we're going to get into that today, and I'm joined by Daniel, Millie and Tyler, and you all have different relationships to alcohol. So let's start off by talking about those. Daniel, tell me about yours.
Yeah, so today I don't drink at all, but when I was in my early 20s, I think I felt maybe a bit of like societal pressure, you know, work drinks or being at uni where it was the norm to just join in. I think you'd probably get a few weird glances if you're like, no, I'm not going to join in at all. So I did that, and I think COVID lockdown just gave me a bit of confidence to say, okay, let me step away from this. It's not necessarily something I want to do moving forward. And yeah, when I went back into work environments and social environments, I was more comfortable with saying no.
So how many years have you been sober for?
I would say it's been 6 years now.
6 years. Millie, what about you?
Yeah, a sort of similar story in that I don't drink at all. So I stopped drinking over 8 years ago now when I was 26, and that was because of the effect that it was having on my mental health. So I really struggled with my mental health in my 20s and got into a real cycle of like binge drinking and drinking to feel less anxious, etc. And yeah, I got to a point where my relationship with alcohol was quite problematic. So in 2018 I decided that was it, I was stopping altogether, and here we are.
Yeah, I grew up in a family that well, my family's quite big drinkers. We do dinners and a lot of parties and stuff like that. So actually, from when I was a teenager, it was just normal to have wine with dinner. And now I found there are loads more parties and like sober raves and stuff like that. Even day raves, matcha latte raves, all of that kind of stuff. What about you, Tyler?
Well, quite similar to Daniel and Millie,
Yeah.
I got to a point where my relationship with alcohol was really detrimental to my own health. Recently I actually got put into the hospital for appendicitis, and I had a full body scan from my doctor, who basically showed me all my organs, and he got to my liver and was like, your liver looks really bad for a 23-year-old, which was quite a slap in the face. And then from there, I just went fully teetotal. Have tried sobriety in the past, but I think for a lot of people, it's not always linear. And there are points where you do relapse. I haven't necessarily had the best support system in the past, but now I've put myself around communities and people that do support me and have like encouraged me to be the better version of myself. Which I think has been really helpful, and obviously the wide variety of now low and no alcohol options just really helps.
We just cheers to that, because these are really... What does a night out for you guys look like now compared to when you were like 18 or 19?
Oh God, when I was 18, 19, it would be a lot of nights that I don't actually remember, but that just goes to show like when I was young, I wasn't necessarily educated on how to use alcohol responsibly.
Were any of us?
I don't think any of us were.
Culturally, I don't think it's something that I definitely didn't grow up with it.
I think that's the thing, right? Like, because people say, oh, just don't drink instead of here's how to do it responsibly. We're never taught from a young age how to have a healthy relationship with alcohol. So you get to a point where you turn 18, and for a lot of us, it's younger. It might be 15, 16 in a park with a bottle of wine or something. And then from that point, it just becomes really unhealthy. And if you do it regularly enough, I think that can be obviously really dangerous for a lot of kids who don't necessarily know how to use it properly.
So now, when you go out?
Now when I go out, I'm on the 0%ers. And sometimes when I do get that urge to drink, I just say no, and I'm gonna go home.
Okay.
Yeah, I just call it quits. Even if I'm there for like an hour, I get myself out of there because I don't want to risk relapsing again.
Yeah. What about you, Millie? Do you find it's changed your social patterns and behaviours? Are you more of an early girl these days?
Yeah, 100%. I think definitely at the beginning as well, it did really change, because I didn't necessarily want to be putting myself in those environments. I think the longer I've been sober, the more I find it easier to socialise, because you know, like I don't have that peer pressure anymore. Everyone has stopped asking me a long time ago whether I'm drinking. So I think it's been such a, like, I hate using the word, but like journey of it changing. But largely quite a lot now is exactly the same. I just probably go home a bit earlier. I still like going to the same places with the people who have like supported me through it. But I think it just gets to a point where I'm like, I'm tired now, and there's no amount of like, you know, caffeine that is going to touch the spot. Like I've got to the point now, I've reached the limit, otherwise I'm going to get heart palpitations. Then I just, like you said, I just call it a night. And so that's really the main difference, I think.
And Daniel, you work at a company that puts on sober events, and we're seeing that, you know, in the UK, I'm just going to get some data up, 16 to 24s are more likely to be non-drinkers than older adults. There's similar data from places like the US, Australia and New Zealand. Is that what you're seeing in the events that you run?
Yeah, I think the best example is most recently we had some football screenings for the World Cup.
Yeah.
And I think when you think of football, you think of, you know,
beer,
being at a pub. You know, it's almost like those two are synonymous, especially in Britain. So I think what was great was that it brought through a lot of people who don't necessarily go out to watch football. It's something they might do when they're at home with their families, when they were younger at least. But now, you know, as adults, maybe they're watching it by themselves at home. So I think they found a space where, you know, there's no alcohol, and therefore they felt safe to come out and, you know, enjoy World Cup when they maybe wouldn't have usually.
Are you guys seeing these patterns in your friends as well? Are more of your friends giving up drinking, and is there less stigma actually, less pressure on people to drink nowadays? What do you think, Tyler?
Yeah, I think in my friend group, it's definitely a mixture of both. There's some of my friends which definitely continue to drink and do whatever. And I mean, if that's their path, that's their path. You can't really change that. But I do definitely see in some of my group, having been the first one myself to be like, hey guys, here's an alternative to how we party usually. They're following along with that. So for me, a lot of what actually helped me was going to like mindfulness retreats and doing cacao ceremonies and doing stuff that really puts myself out of my, firstly, comfort zone, but secondly, just this space where partying usually occurs. Because especially for me, being like a young queer person, we're definitely pushed through as young people to these bars and third spaces. Like the whole liberation movement was going to these spaces and partying and feeling yourself. But when feeling yourself is tied to alcohol and just not necessarily not fun stuff, but fun things that can be quite dangerous for you at a young age, it's scary. But it's nice to see that a lot of my friends are moving towards that, and a lot of the people that I used to party with and go to raves with are also on that path as well.
It's like conscious communities.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you talked a bit about your health. Obviously, that's a major reason why a lot of people are doing it. But why do you think some of the other reasons are that we're seeing so many young people giving up drinking altogether or having a different relationship with alcohol?
I think there's a yearning in our generation for different third spaces. Spaces where you can come together and have a community and have that inclusive energy, but it's not necessarily somewhere that comes with, obviously some places come with a security guard, but security guard eyeing you up about your drink or like the entry fee being a bar tab. It's going to maybe a Pilates studio or going to a yoga session. Like
activities, basically.
Activities, exactly.
Yeah.
Like we love bouldering, we love climbing, we like run clubs.
I think we'd get on quite well.
Yeah.
Yeah. What about you? What are some of the reasons you think, apart from, you know, your personal reasons, which are to do with mental health?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we can ignore the cost of living crisis. I think so many people are now just so cash poor, and they're, you know, deciding to spend their money on maybe experiences that don't make them feel as bad the next day. I think that's an element to it. I think social media has played a part, I think in a good way and like a bad way. I think from a good perspective, you know, so many other things and like options out there. Like you'll see a TikTok of someone bouldering and go, I want to try that. And building a business is more attainable and traveling feels more accessible. So I think there is that element as well. I think that, but I do, like from my perspective of the mental health, I think generally we are talking about mental health more, and I think for a long time we left alcohol out of that conversation. I think now it's becoming part of it, so there is more of an awareness.
And you know, some people say that Gen Z goes out less, that nowadays, you know, a lot of stuff takes place online, people are dating online, meeting people online, you know, gaming. Is that something that you're seeing, that people are going out less and that could be a reason why people are drinking less, or is that not really affecting, considering you work in the area and the scene?
I think obviously just from the small community that we have, I see a lot of people who really want that space to come out and meet people in real life.
Yeah.
You know, I'm someone who's made friends online, and I'm sure plenty of people in the generation that come after me do as well. But I think, yeah, from what we've seen, they're really looking for that space where they can come out after work on a weekday. We've had like sold out events on like a Thursday evening or a Wednesday evening.
And there does seem to be this contradiction that I mentioned earlier, which is that overall, younger people are drinking less, but my TikTok, I don't know about yours, is full of everyone's buying tinnies and going to the park for picnics and all of that. And there is this this research that suggests that binge drinking in this age group, in under 25s, has been going up. So why do you think that is, Millie?
I think there is a bit of a rejection to the kind of like, well, I've seen it's a kind of phrased as clean girl aesthetic is out, like, you know, messy girls
in.
I think we had this like rise of self-optimization content. I think unfortunately sobriety kind of got swept in with that, and it got touted us this way to, you know, get up at 5 a.m, do a high rocks, and, you know, for many of us that's probably not our reality with not drinking. It's that we do it to feel a bit more sane, or, you know, things like that. And so I think now we are entering this like almost pushback era of that content, and I think as a rejection of that kind of self-optimization stuff, we're now seeing this like almost anti-movement in the other direction. You're seeing celebrities, like, it's not just alcohol, you're seeing more celebrity smoking and like posting that on their Instagram and not worrying if it's brand friendly.
Interesting what you said about people just turning their backs on this kind of wellness trend. I've heard it being described as wellness fatigue. Is this something that you're seeing among your friends as well? Are they just kind of giving up on all of that restriction?
I think a lot of the mental health that you speak about comes into play as well, right? So it's like, if you are feeling quite bad one day and you are on that cusp of, am I going to go get a drink? Am I not? Am I going to go to a run class? Am I not? You're more likely to be swayed by that extra drink because, let's say, your friends are going out for a football game that night. It can be quite bad, and especially if, like, for example, if you look through potential like a queer lens, I know it's homosexual men are 2 times more likely to heavily drink at a young age than heterosexual men, which that comes into a lot of the stigma that people go through at a young age. That's like having to hide your identity and then finding it in the bars and clubs. That's the only space you know. So if you then get told, oh, let's go to a run club, you're like, absolutely not. Absolutely not. That's not my identity is. That's not what my community is, or my chosen family.
What about you? Are you seeing younger people starting to drink more, or maybe just drinking more when they do drink, having heavier sessions?
From what I've seen within my circles, I don't know a lot of people that do drink. Like, I think a lot of people, my friends anyway, are more like me, so it's not something I have like a lot of experience seeing now.
So do you think that your drinking habits now are going to last, is my first kind of part A of the question. Second of all, do you think it's fair to call Gen Z the sober generation?
In terms of, is it fair to say they're the sober generation? I'd say being inclusive of that low alcohol percentage range is definitely something that that our generation is quite concerned about, even if it's not no alcohol, it's that 0.5% to maybe 1% drinks, like they're definitely going towards that.
Moderation.
Yeah, exactly. We're doing it in moderation. And will I continue this sober streak? Definitely, mainly because the doctor told me my life could be on the line at 30,
Really?
if it is the case. University and freshers was a very fun time for me, but obviously it's had its effects on me. So yeah, I think a lot of people, if they're in that position, should definitely try and stay with sobriety, or at least look towards alternatives.
I think it's a really complex one, because I think if you're just looking at drinking, like, we could be saying they are a bit more of the sober generation, but, you know, we've also got stats of rising drug use. We get a lot of girls come to our platform who alcohol is not necessarily the main problem, but every time they drink it leads them to, like, the big 2 ones at the moment are ketamine and cocaine. So I think there's also kind of like that angle as well that we don't necessarily talk about as much. So I think it's really hard to say definitively whether they are the sober generation or not. I think it'll be interesting to see how this plays out over the next few years. But in terms of my drinking habits, I'm kind of like, this is me forever now. I've done it for so long that I can't see a world in which I'd want to go back. I've tackled every obstacle. I've done Hindus, weddings, festivals. Really? Like, there's nothing I don't think now that I'd be like, oh yeah, I really want to drink at that.
I think people listening to this would be really impressed by that. Do you guys have any tips for people who might want to start sobriety, to give it a go?
I'd say, you know, just don't be afraid of like that kind of individuality or standing out from the crowd. You know, people might question it, but ultimately it's your own decision and deciding what's best for you. And like, not in a rude way, but honestly, it's just not other people's business sometimes what you decide to do.
Yeah, I think probably trying to understand the reasons that you drink or that you use alcohol for, because I think for a lot of us it's not necessarily about the alcohol, it's what the alcohol gives us. So like, if you're drinking for confidence, can you maybe work on your confidence? If you're drinking because you always use it to unwind, what other ways could you explore of unwinding? So sometimes I think we focus so much on like giving up the alcohol, but actually sometimes if you know, put those systems in place and create better coping mechanisms, naturally the alcohol can like fall away a bit easier. So I think that's the thing that I would say.
That's a really good tip. What about you?
For me, I think it would be try not to feel guilt in that process, because a lot of times for me it was definitely hard to stick to sobriety, and I felt a lot of guilt and shame during that process. May it be whether I went through a relapse, or even during that process I felt guilt and shame for not going out with my friends or not getting that drink that everyone told me to get. But take it at your own pace, because everyone's different in their own sobriety journey, but just feel confident in the fact that you've taken that first step, and the first step is usually the hardest.
Yeah. Cool. Guys, thank you so much for coming here today, and also for opening up and being like really honest about your own journeys. It's been really, really useful and helpful to understand a bit more about where you guys are coming from. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.